when you go and buy Tiffany Haddish a car, see, if we remember the movie Cadillac Records, I'll keep buying you a car, but I won't give you what you're worth.
It's real. Like,
No.
if the man looks too good to be true, he is.
Don't ask me to do shit just to get, oh, she's a nice person. Tiffany's so nice and so sweet. That nice. That nice. I'm tired of being fucking nice to you.
Have you ever had that one moment where you just knew your life was about to change forever? For Tiffany Haddish, that moment came back in the early 2010s. Picture this. She's crashing on friends' couches, grinding through open mic nights, and working day jobs just to make ends meet. But despite everything, she's convinced, absolutely sure, that if she could just get the right opportunity, she could light up a screen. Then, the call came. Tyler Perry's team was on the line, and it felt like her big break. After all, Perry wasn't just some director. He was the powerhouse of Hollywood, writing, producing, and directing films that made him the industry's one-man studio. He was on top of the world, and now he was offering her a shot. But here's the thing. That chance wasn't what she thought it would be. It was a small role, a supporting character for a flat $1,200. No residuals, no union protections. Take it or leave it. And for Tiffany, still counting quarters to put gas in her car, it felt like a lifeline. She signed, not knowing what would happen next, or the painful lesson that would come with it. Tiffany Haddish was no stranger to the grind. Back in the early 2010s, she was fighting for every inch of her career. The hustle was real. She was crashing on couches, bouncing from one open mic night to the next, and juggling day jobs just to pay the bills. But even then, she knew one thing. She was ready for more. She was ready to take Hollywood by storm if only someone would give her the chance. She told anyone who would listen, "I can light up that screen, just give me one shot." Then, as if out of nowhere, it came. Tyler Perry, the man who had built his empire with his own hands, a man who had gone from the bottom to running the largest black-owned studio in Hollywood. And now, he was offering Tiffany something. It wasn't the dream job she had imagined, but it was a role. And for a comedian still counting her change for gas, $200 and the chance to step on set felt like the big break she'd been waiting for. It was a chance. But was it really? When Tiffany got the call from Tyler Perry's team, she thought this was it. She was going to make it. She was going to be part of something big. But then came the offer. A small supporting role, a one-time payment of $1,100, no residuals, no union protections, no guarantees. It wasn't exactly the dream deal she had envisioned, but to Tiffany, it was better than nothing. She was desperate, she was hungry, and for an actress living paycheck to paycheck, $200 seemed like a lifeline, no matter how small the role. So, she signed. She agreed to the deal, hoping that it would be the first step towards something bigger. But here's the thing. Tiffany didn't realize it at the time, but that small role, that tiny paycheck, it was just the beginning of a much bigger problem. One that would haunt her for years. What she didn't know then was that Tyler Perry's empire wasn't built on fair deals. It was built on exploitation. And for Tiffany, that small $2,100 wasn't just a bad contract. It was the beginning of a system designed to keep actors like her at the bottom, while the people at the top raked in all the profits. The days after Tiffany wrapped filming were filled with excitement. She had given it her all, 14-hour shifts, pouring everything into the role, hoping that one performance would lead to the next. When the shoot ended, she walked off the set feeling lighter, hopeful that this was the start of her big break. But then, weeks passed. Then months. No check. No phone call. At first, she told herself it was just a slow accounting department. After all, Hollywood can be chaotic, right? A few delays here and there. But as time dragged on, a nagging voice in the back of her head grew louder. Something wasn't right. So she did what anyone would do, she asked. She sent polite inquiries, hoping for an answer. But what did she get in return? A single, vague email that promised the check was processing soon. And then, nothing. Meanwhile, the film she had worked on quietly slipped into the spotlight. It appeared on cable, then streaming, then syndication. Everywhere she looked, there was Tyler Perry's name in bright, bold letters. Writer, director, producer, owner. And there, buried in the credits, was Tiffany's name, almost invisible. A background note in the credits quickly passed over. And still, no check, no recognition, just silence. That silence, she says, speaks volumes. It wasn't an oversight. It was a system designed to keep people like her, hungry, desperate for the next gig, out of the conversation, out of the profits. Tiffany's experience wasn't an isolated incident. As she watched the months slip by without a paycheck, she started to see the bigger picture. She wasn't the only one. Hollywood's system, she realized, was built on keeping the profits at the top while leaving the people doing the real work, actors, extras, day players, scraping for crumbs. And the man at the center of this system? Tyler Perry. The empire he built wasn't just about creating stories, it was about controlling every revenue stream. From the theatrical box office to late-night reruns, Perry had found a way to dominate the credits without sharing the wealth. By claiming sole authorship of nearly everything that bears his brand, Perry controlled the production costs, keeping them razor-thin. Meanwhile, actors like Tiffany were signing work-for-hire deals, one-time payments, no royalties, no share in the back end. It was efficient for him, yes. But for the performers? It meant no health insurance, no benefits, no financial security. Tiffany saw it clearly now. Her unpaid $1,200 wasn't just a mistake. It was the result of a system designed to concentrate wealth at the top and keep everyone else dependent on the next gig, the next paycheck. And as she looked around at other actors on Perry's sets, she realized they were all playing the same game, just hoping that one day their hard work might lead to something better. But that hope? It was often dashed by silence. Tiffany's story wasn't an isolated one. It was just a small piece of a much larger, deeply entrenched pattern in Hollywood. What happened to her, what happened at Tyler Perry's studio, was happening everywhere. Big-name directors with streaming deals, reality TV producers offering exposure in exchange for labor, even indie auteurs working on shoestring budgets, leaning on the same logic. The project is lucky to break even, so talent should be grateful for whatever they get. It was a pattern that stretched across the entire industry. Whether it was a huge studio production or a low-budget indie film, the game was the same. Performers were often asked to sign non-union contracts, waiving overtime and fair pay in exchange for the opportunity to be on camera. And in the case of Perry's empire, it wasn't just a few actors struggling. It was a system that relied on silence, on artists too afraid to speak out, afraid that speaking up would mean the end of their careers. Tiffany was no different. For years, she kept quiet, worried that voicing her frustrations would brand her as difficult and ruin her chances of landing future gigs. But she wasn't alone. As protests grew outside Tyler Perry Studios in 2015, more and more actors, background performers, day players, even veterans, came forward with similar stories. They'd been asked to sign agreements with no overtime, no residuals, no royalties. They had been promised the chance to work, but not the protection or the compensation they deserved. Tiffany saw it now. It wasn't just an isolated issue, it was a systemic problem. One that affected not just her, but thousands of other actors and performers trying to make it in the industry. So why speak out now? Why reopen a wound that's been silent for so long? Tiffany's decision to finally speak out wasn't just about her own story, it was about something bigger. She wanted closure, yes, but there was also the timing. With Tyler Perry facing a growing pile of lawsuits and public scrutiny over his business practices, Tiffany knew that her voice could add weight to a conversation that had been brewing for years. Her confession landed like a spark on a slow-burning fire. It wasn't just one actor's story anymore. It was proof that the problems at Perry's studio weren't just rumors. They were real, and they were happening across the industry. Tiffany emphasized that she wasn't chasing back pay. The statute of limitations on that had long since passed. What she wanted was accountability. She wanted to shine a light on the power imbalance that existed within Hollywood. A system that allowed the people at the top to thrive while those doing the hard work were left behind, unpaid, unheard. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect, recognition, and a demand for change. Tiffany knew this wouldn't be easy. She knew it might come with backlash, but she also knew that speaking out could open doors for the next generation of actors, those who wouldn't have to settle for a paycheck that barely covered their coffee. Her voice, loud and clear, was a call to action. If Hollywood was going to change, it had to start with breaking the silence. As Tiffany's story hit the public eye, the reactions were fast and divided. The internet, with its unfiltered opinions, wasted no time weighing in. On one side, there were fans who clung to Tyler Perry's rags-to-riches narrative. They defended his tight budgets, claiming that his model allowed him to employ thousands of people and uplift black talent that mainstream Hollywood had ignored. For them, Perry's success was a victory, proof that the system could work if you just played it smart. But on the other side, voices began to question the true cost of Perry's success. Uplift how? They asked. If his actors can't even count on the checks they're promised, what kind of success is this really? Young performers, many of whom were just starting out, took to platforms like TikTok to share their own horror stories. "Same thing happened to me," they posted. "Non-union gig, different producer, same silence." Veteran stage actors added their voices too. They'd been warning newcomers for years about the danger of deals that seemed too good to be true. And now, they saw Tiffany's story as confirmation of what they had been saying all along. The debate quickly grew beyond Tiffany's experience. It became a critique of the very gatekeepers who preach community and inclusion while simultaneously guarding every revenue faucet. Perry, for his part, stayed publicly quiet. His camp released a brief statement emphasizing the number of jobs his studio provided and claiming that any compensation disputes should be handled through the appropriate channels. No direct denial, no apology, just more corporate speak. For Tiffany, that response felt like déjà vu. Cordial words that resolved nothing. But there was something else too. Progress. She saw it in the way the internet had mobilized around the issue. A decade ago, speaking out might have meant professional exile, but in 2025, transparency was currency. And suddenly, hiding behind NDAs and silence seemed outdated. What Tiffany's confession made clear was this: the tides were shifting. In the past, a story like hers might have been buried under layers of industry politics, swept under the rug in favor of maintaining the status quo. But today, things were different. Social media had changed everything. The same platforms that had once been used to promote polished images and perfect personas were now the battlegrounds for exposing corporate misdeeds and fighting for accountability. Tiffany's story was just one example of the growing conversation about labor rights in Hollywood and beyond. In 2025, transparency was no longer a buzzword. It was expected. Audiences weren't just binge-watching their favorite shows, they were diving deep into the behind-the-scenes stories. They wanted to know how things were made, who was profiting, and at what cost. Tiffany saw this shift firsthand. A decade ago, sharing her frustrations might have meant alienating herself from the industry, a career killer for any actor. But now, the internet had a way of turning silence into noise. It was no longer about just the stars and the directors, it was about everyone who made the magic happen, and whether they were getting their fair share. More and more people were demanding fairness, not just in pay, but in how workers were treated across industries. Tiffany had cracked open a door, and now others would follow. The real question was, would the studios and the powerful producers like Perry listen? Or would they continue to hide behind the same old excuses, hoping the world would keep quiet? As the dust settles on Tiffany Haddish's powerful revelation, one undeniable truth emerges. If someone as visible and accomplished as Tiffany can walk away from a project unpaid and unheard, how many others, lesser-known artists, actors on the margins, have shared even harsher stories? Stories buried under the fear of lost livelihoods, the threat of blacklisting. Hollywood's broken system isn't just about a few bad deals. It's about an entire culture that has ignored the voices of those who bring the magic to life. And the longer this silence persists, the more it becomes the norm. But now, thanks to Tiffany, the silence is broken. The industry can no longer pretend it didn't hear the message. Tiffany's story isn't just personal revenge, it's a wake-up call. A warning shot fired at any production house that believes actors won't notice the flow of money that they're left out of. It's a call to change, a demand for fairness. But the change isn't just up to Tiffany, or even the actors who have been silent for too long. Now, it's up to the audience. Will they keep streaming reruns without a second thought? Or will they start demanding something more? Something better? As consumers, they now have the power to push for transparency, fair pay, and revenue sharing. Just like how they hunt for sustainability labels on sneakers, they can demand the same from the studios. Will Hollywood finally adopt true revenue-sharing models, or will it take regulators to force them to change? No single interview or revelation can fix the decades of imbalance, but it can start a conversation. Tiffany's story, her courage to speak out, has set the narrative in motion. And now, it's up to the rest of us, fans, viewers, and industry workers alike, to make sure it doesn't stop here. And that's where we stand today. Tiffany Haddish's story has cracked open a door for a much-needed change in Hollywood. But now, it's up to all of us to keep the conversation going. If you found this story as eye-opening as we did, make sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this and ring that bell so you don't miss out on any future revelations. Share this with your friends. Let's get the word out and demand more transparency in the industry. This conversation doesn't end here, so stay tuned. We'll keep shining a light on the truth, one story at a time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.